She walked into the dealership she built from the ground up, yet today, no one knew who she really was. To them, she was just another black woman browsing cars. But when a suspicious client whispered to security, everything changed. Accusations flew, eyes turned cold, and suddenly, the woman who signed every paycheck was treated like a criminal in her own business. What happens when prejudice collides with power, when those who judge have no idea who they're judging? This is that story. For most people, success is measured in milestones: a new job, a first home, a dream finally reached. For Vanessa Carter, success was owning the very dealership where she once sold cars on commission. After years of long nights, boardroom battles, and proving herself in an industry dominated by men, she had built a multi-million-dollar empire. To her employees, she was the visionary leader who never stopped pushing. To her customers, she was the face behind every deal, every handshake, every guarantee. But Vanessa had learned something troubling. Behind the polished glass walls of her dealership, not every customer was treated equally. Whispers of dismissive attitudes, stories of cold stares, and subtle biases began to reach her ears. She wanted to see the truth for herself, not as the CEO, but as an ordinary woman walking in from the street. So one morning, she made a choice: no suits, no title, no introductions, just her and the cars on the lot. She didn't know it yet, but what would unfold that day would expose more than she ever expected. Vanessa strolled across the dealership lot, her steps unhurried, her eyes scanning the rows of gleaming vehicles that she knew better than anyone else. To the sales team, she was just another customer, anonymous, unimportant. She wanted it that way. She wanted to see the truth when no one thought she was watching. At first, the experience was subtle. A salesman passed her by, his smile polite but fleeting, as though he'd already decided she wasn't worth his time. He veered toward a white couple instead, showering them with greetings, offering them brochures, ushering them toward the newest SUV. Vanessa stood just feet away, ignored as though invisible. She moved deeper into the showroom. That's when it started. A man, mid-40s, dressed in an expensive suit, watched her with suspicion. His eyes followed her every step, narrowing as if her very presence was out of place. Vanessa felt the weight of his stare but kept her composure, running her hand along the sleek hood of a luxury sedan. Then it happened. The man leaned toward the receptionist and muttered something under his breath. A moment later, she saw it, the discreet call to security. Her chest tightened, but she remained calm. She'd built her career on staying composed under pressure. Still, she couldn't ignore the sting of what was unfolding. This wasn't just a cold shoulder. This was an accusation without words. Within minutes, a uniformed guard approached. His stride was brisk, his face set in stone. "Ma'am, can I help you?" he asked, but his tone wasn't welcoming. It was sharp, edged with suspicion. Vanessa answered evenly, "Just looking." But the guard didn't move on. He hovered, arms crossed, as if waiting for her to slip, waiting for confirmation of the story he had already written about her. Other customers began to notice. Some glanced curiously, others whispered. Vanessa felt the air shift, the quiet murmur of judgment filling the room. She had walked in as an ordinary woman, but now she stood branded as an outsider in her own house. The salesman who had ignored her earlier now joined the guard, his voice laced with doubt. "Are you sure you're in the right place, ma'am? These cars start at $40,000. It wasn't just a question. It was a dismissal, a reminder of the assumptions stitched into their words. Vanessa's heart pounded, not with fear, but with something sharper, righteous anger. She had expected bias, maybe even cold indifference. But this was the open face of prejudice, unfolding step by step in the very place she had worked years to build. And as the guard leaned closer, his voice lowering to a warning tone, Vanessa realized the test had gone further than she imagined. They weren't just doubting her, they were preparing to remove her. The guard stepped closer, his presence looming, his voice clipped with authority. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to leave the premises." The words cut through the air like a blade. Around them, the murmur of onlookers grew louder. Curious eyes, whispered assumptions, silent judgments. Vanessa stood frozen, not from fear, but from the crushing weight of humiliation. She had spent decades proving her worth in boardrooms where few women, let alone black women, were ever welcomed. Yet here she was, treated like an intruder in a place that bore her name. Her pulse hammered in her ears as the salesman added fuel to the fire. "We've had problems before," he said, his tone dripping with contempt. "Better to be safe." The guard nodded, his hand resting on the radio at his belt. For a moment, Vanessa felt the room closing in, her identity stripped away, her authority invisible, her humanity questioned. Every second stretched, heavy with tension. She could reveal herself right then, end the charade with a single sentence, but the truth was bigger than her pride. This was the moment she had feared, and the moment she needed to witness. The silence broke when the guard reached for her arm. The air crackled, heart stopped, eyes widened. Vanessa stood her ground, her gaze steady, her voice firm but quiet. "Careful." It was a single word, but it carried the weight of years of struggle, the fire of someone who refused to be erased. And in that instant, the balance shifted. The question was no longer whether she belonged there, it was whether they could survive the truth that was about to come crashing down. The guard's hand lingered, but before he could push further, Vanessa reached into her bag, not for defense, but for proof. With calm precision, she pulled out her access badge. The gold emblem gleamed under the showroom lights, stamped with a title that silenced the room: Owner and CEO. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The guard froze, the salesman's face drained of color, his arrogance collapsing into stammering apologies. In that instant, every assumption, every judgment, every ounce of bias stood exposed in the harshest light. Vanessa didn't need to raise her voice. Her presence, her truth, was enough to unravel their prejudice. But the damage was done. The humiliation couldn't be erased. The sting of being doubted in her own empire couldn't be softened by hurried apologies. She had walked in to test what she had only suspected, and what she uncovered was undeniable. Behind polished walls and polite smiles, racism still thrived.